I guess first off, what is a futurist?
I think the word means different things to different people.
Do you like the word?
I think it sounds cooler than it is, or sometimes it can kind of throw people off and you end up spending more time kind of explaining it in some ways.
Yeah.
So I'm not totally attached to it, but it just, I think it nicely kind of summarizes what I do, but if we ended up changing it, I'm good with that
You're
too.
cool with that all. If there's a rebrand in the futurist industry, you're like, all right, fine.
I'm down with the rebrand.
So what does that word, what does it mean for what you do?
Mapping out data points and forecasting trends and future scenarios. So that's how I adopt the term or use it, and what I spend a lot of my day doing.
Right, which is interesting, and that's why I bring up the model thing before, because you wrote a fabulous article for Vogue, basically saying, I'm a model, and I recognize that artificial intelligence will take my job. Which is a bold claim for someone that's in the industry. I think most people would be like kind of Luddites and be like, I don't like this new thing that's going to come for my industry. Why do you believe that artificial intelligence will take your job?
I think AI, modeling aside, artificial intelligence is going to impact every single job. And so there really isn't an industry or a lane that I think is immune, modeling included. And when you look at what AI can do, anything that's predictable and repetitive is really within AI's wheelhouse. And that's one aspect of modeling. So anything kind of e-commerce modeling is kind of predictable, repetitive movements. You go to like an H&M website, and most of the positioning of the models is kind of similar. Maybe a front shot, maybe a side shot.
Right.
So AI is really good at that type of predictable design, so to speak. And then when you combine that type of repetition with technology like generative AI, so you might have seen like deep fakes, and you're like, okay, we can do something predictable with faces and images that look rather human. The intersection of that is fashion modeling. And then there's, of course, aspects of modeling like a cover shoot that seems a little bit more creative. But then we're seeing things like Dolly, where it's designing that type of imagery from scratch.
Yeah, are there different types of modeling that you think will be impacted sooner or later? Like I don't know a ton about modeling, but I imagine that the type of modeling that is like sitting in like a Land's End catalog with like a sweater is different than like high fashion walking on a runway. So both of those are modeling, but I think they're very different. And I'm curious, do you think AI will impact those two industries at different rates?
I do, and for different reasons. I think people are less emotionally attached to maybe something that they see on an e-commerce site, and you're kind of shopping more for convenience. And people, even though there are a lot of incredible skills and minds to make that possible, the outcome and the interface with customers, people are less emotionally tied to it.
Right.
When you think of somebody on the front page of a high fashion magazine, that seems to occupy a more sacred area in people's minds. And I think having to interface with like an avatar or something that's not real, I think will take a little bit more time.
And I think there's also like an interpersonal relationship with it. Like when I see like Bradley Cooper wearing a watch, like over here in Soho, there's like there's a Rolex ad with him wearing a watch. They are choosing him specifically because he, as a human being, carries social cachet.
His story.
So in that regard, that role in that ad might be taken over by AI at a slower rate because it lacks the interpersonality.
Yeah, for sure. I think the story of why someone's chosen in sort of a campaign goes with their humanness, but something that doesn't necessarily have that tie to it, there seems less at stake. And if you've shopped online for clothes, you've probably come across AI models and you just don't even really know it.
Oh, you think it's already rolled out? Really?
So there's like German e-commerce brands have been studying how to make deep fake modeling for years, and they have a lot of incredible, impressive papers out. So I think it's already here. Japan has a few companies. I'm not remembering, DataGrid, I believe is the name. And they kind of print out e-commerce style fashion models.
And so as a model, are you concerned about this? Does it make you sad? Like, I know there's a lot of ethical concerns that we can get into next, but I'm curious, you personally, are you like, oh, what a shame. I love, modeling, but now that's going to be sideswiped by this emerging industry?
Yeah, it's interesting that no one's actually ever asked me that. In a way, yes, because I really enjoy what I get to do as a model and the things I learned about myself in that role. And so that's changing is, yeah, of course I'll have to part with that in some ways. But I also think as someone who exists in the world of technology and futurism, I'd much rather be prepared so I can adapt to what's coming. And it doesn't necessarily mean that modeling is completely wiped out. It just means that it's definitely going to change and have to evolve. And if you have that foresight to kind of be a few steps ahead, you don't run the risk of just kind of becoming obsolete.
Right. And what are the ethical concerns that come along with AI modeling? I know you've touched on racial issues, and I'm curious about those, and I wonder if there's others that are similar to that, but we can start on that if you'd like.
Well, I think even just with job loss in general, that also is a massive gray ethical kind of conundrum. Anytime you have automation in the line of fire, that, comes with it some ethical flags.
Do you think that, actually on that point specifically, do you think there will be a push by brands to be like, hey, all of our models are real models that are real people, and we are, funding and supporting like real women of color and things like that in their campaigns in the next few years? Or do you think like almost like a Made in America, Will had brought this up, that like Dove's like real body campaign, was promoting like real women. Will there be a similar push with AI on the horizon to be like, hey, we're using real women and not artificially created women?
Yeah, made by a human. I think that is a conversation happening in creative worlds in general and art worlds as AI starts to kind of step into these spaces.